Hello my sweet angel besties, welcome back. A new month has begun, which means we get to talk about all of the books that we read last month in March. And as per usual, let's revisit our monthly TBR. So these are the 6 books that I had on my TBR for March, and we read all 6 of them. I'm very happy with that. It is always so satisfying when I actually finish a TBR because it doesn't always happen. I always do try to prioritize my monthly TBR books. However, sometimes mood reading just gets the best of me and I just end up picking other books instead. But this month we had a successful TBR month and I'm very happy about it. As for some other stats, if you are interested, I read a total of 11 books. 5 of those were romance books. 2 of them were general fiction, 2 of them were fantasy, and 2 of them were sci-fi. So far this year, this is the least amount of books that I've read in a month, but I will say it was quality over quantity this month. I'm still very happy with reading 11 books, like that is not an issue to me, but the fact that I read less books but had my highest ratings yet, I'm just so excited about that. Like I said, quality over quantity. I don't think I've had this many 5-star reads in 1 month for a very long time, so I'm very excited to talk about these books today. Starting off with Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, my first Fredrik Backman book, but it definitely won't be my last. I would say this is just like a general fiction book. It is written in a very unique way. It follows the story of a person who is trying to rob a bank but ends up accidentally taking a group of people as hostages in an open home instead. It's a very just like strange story, and the people in this story are also quite odd, but it is weirdly fascinating, and I feel like the writing style was just so interesting even though it was a little bit bizarre, because you get in the heads of all of these different people: the bank robber, the hostages, the real estate agent, the police officers that are trying to like sort out the hostage situation. Like, you are in everyone's head and everyone just has such interesting thoughts, and a lot of people are kind of keeping secrets or hiding things that eventually come to light. It was just so unique. Like, I just really haven't read a book like this. I ended up rating this 4 stars. I did enjoy it a lot, and like I said, I was just very interested by it, but I definitely wasn't like obsessed with it. It was fun to try something different, but I don't think I'd want to read a lot of books like this. I feel like people just rave about his books, and so I'm glad that I started with this one. I feel like it was just like a nice easy one to get into. It definitely got me thinking deeper about the situations and about these people, even though it's not really written in a way where you would think you would. I don't know how to explain it better. It's just one of those books where I don't think you'll really get it until you read it, so I do definitely recommend it, especially if you just want something a little bit different. Maybe you're sick of reading rom-coms or fantasy books where they follow just like a really similar formula and you just want something really different. I would definitely recommend this. I feel like the main takeaway from this book for me was that you just really have no idea what anyone else is going through, and how people present themselves is not actually who they are. A lot of the time there's usually something deeper going on. They're usually more anxious than they appear, or more insecure than they appear, or more caring even than they appear. So I don't know. It was just a very interesting read, and I'm excited to continue Fredrik Backman's backlist. Next, I picked up Play Along by Liz Tomford. I feel like I read this book so long ago, like Anxious People and this one. I'm like, I feel like I read these books months ago. But anyway, I read this one on my Kindle. This is the 4th book in the Windy City series, which is a sports romance series where each book in the series follows a different couple, and the guy in each book is some sort of sportsman. So in this book, our male main character is a baseball player and our female main character is like part of the medic team for the baseball team, and I loved the couple in this book. Isaiah was just completely and utterly obsessed with Kennedy, and that was just so fun to read. It's so interesting because I feel like I normally don't like insta love. I don't want the couple to like each other straight away. I want a bit of a slow burn, but this still kind of felt like a slow burn because Isaiah was just like utterly obsessed and like infatuated by Kennedy, but she did not feel the same, and it took her a long time to reciprocate. And even though Isaiah was like infatuated, he didn't really like know Kennedy until we got into the book a little bit further, you know what I mean? Like, he was attracted to her and he thought she was just like beautiful and like so cool, but he didn't really like know her. So although he was obsessed at the beginning, he became actually obsessed by the end of the book, and she became just as obsessed, and it was just it was so much fun. Isaiah is like a class clown and just kind of like loud and silly, and Kennedy is a bit more reserved, a bit more serious. She is honestly like such like a boss lady, like so intelligent and so driven, and just seeing each of them like achieve their dreams whilst falling in love was just so good. I also just loved the plot and the being able to kind of see both characters' kind of backstories come into play, and also like Kennedy was dealing with a specific like work situation. I loved watching that unfold and like see how that ended ended up at the end of the book. And also it's a marriage of convenience, and honestly, marriage of conveniences are so fun. I don't know why they're so fun, but they are so fun. I ended up rating this book 4.25 stars, which is an incredible rating. This book and The Right Move are my highest rated books from this series, and I do think they are like tied for favorite out of the 4 that I've read so far from the series. Can't wait for the next book to come out. I will say though, all of the books in this series are very spicy, and that's probably the only reason that these books aren't 5-star reads for me, because I just don't love like spice heavy books. That's obviously a personal preference thing. If you like spice, you probably like this series even more than I do. That's why we have ratings, because we can choose how we feel about a book. Moving on to my first 5-star read of the month. Yes, I said first because there are multiple, and that is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is the 3rd and final book in the Emily Wilde trilogy, and I'm so sad that this trilogy is over, but I'm so happy that this was a 5-star read for me. Every book in this trilogy has been a 5-star read for me. I know that that's not a shared experience. I feel like this series is very hit and miss. The people who love it, and the people who don't love it, don't. It is slow. It is a cozy fantasy series. There's not a crazy amount happening, but it is the coziest, most whimsical, most magical series you will pick up. If you want something comforting, if you want something cozy, if you want something that feels like a warm cup of tea on a rainy day, this is your series. The series as a whole is about Emily Wilde, who is an academic who in the first book is trying to write an encyclopedia of fairies, and to do that she has to travel to this land that she hasn't been to before to study the folk there, and she does those things with Wendell Bambleby by her side, who begins as a bit of like an academic rival but ends up being a lover. The romance in this series is very minimal, I would say. Like it's like an underlying thing throughout the whole series. It's always there, but it's not like super prevalent. Like it's there and you know it's there and you know how the characters feel about each other, but it's very much a slow burn. It is very like just like crumbs of romance here and there. So don't go into it if you're just like wanting a straight up romance book. I wouldn't say it really gives that energy, but again, this is just such a comfort series for me. I just fell in love with the world and the characters and the writing. It is just the most magical, whimsical thing in the world, and I can't wait to reread all of the books in this series. I just love Emily and Wendell, and I'm so glad that I got to hang out with them for 3 books. Then I ended up having back-to-back 5-star reads because I read my second 5-star read of the month, which was Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is the 2nd book in the Kindred Curse saga, and this was so freaking good. I loved it so much. The first book in the series I rated 4.25, so if you've read the first book but haven't continued it yet and you're like, is it gonna get any better? I think it gets way better. I still really enjoyed the first book. Obviously 4.25 is a fantastic rating, but this book was just like worlds better in my opinion. Like this was incredible. I have no critiques. There was plot, there was romance, there was fun side characters, there was found family, there is politics and secrets, like everything that I want in a fantasy book, this book had it, and I loved it. The books do get like chunkier and chunkier as the series progresses, so it did take me a second to get through this, and it's probably going to take me even longer to get through the 3rd book because that one's even longer, and the 4th book isn't out yet. So if you don't want to read an unfinished series, don't read this series. But if you are looking for something that will just give you like the ultimate escapism, you need to read this series. It's about a girl who's a healer, and she ends up kind of getting involved with the royal family a bit. Her mum was also a healer, and her mum has disappeared, and she is like, where is my mother? I don't think she's dead, but I don't know where she is. And there's just like a lot of secrets. Like there is just a lot that our main character doesn't know about herself, about her family, about her mother in particular. And so she is just trying to figure things out. She's just trying to unpack her own life story, honestly. So if you just love a story with a lot of secrets and like a lot of like slowly finding out what those secrets are, I think this is the perfect series for you. Again, I haven't finished the series, so I don't want to like speak too soon, but if the 3rd book is anything like this one, I am so excited to read it. I feel like I haven't had this feeling about a fantasy series in so long. Reading this book honestly gave me the same feelings as I got when I read ACOTAR or like the Shadowhunters universe, which is saying a lot, but that is how I felt about these books. I'm not saying that you guys will love it as much as you loved ACOTAR or something like that, but I honestly think it gives me the same feelings. It does. It is so freaking good. And I honestly think this is my favorite book that I've picked up maybe all year so far, and that is saying a lot. So an easy 5-star read, honestly a 6-star read. I loved it. Unfortunately, I cannot speak as highly about the next book that I read, but I read Sit Stay Love by Amy Hutton, and I'm so glad that I finally read this because this has been on my physical TBR for years. Like I think since 2022, 2023, one of those, I forget. And as much as I wanted to love this book, and when I first started it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really fun, and I can't believe I've left this sitting on my TBR cart for so long. But then the further I got into it, unfortunately, the less I liked it, and I ended up rating this book 2.5, which is so sad. I wish I could have rated it higher, but it just didn't hit for me. And there were just a few times where I was kind of like, I'm not really loving this, or I don't really love how this has been done, or I feel a bit icky about it. And I think most of that is due to this being a love triangle situation. So if you love love triangles, I would definitely recommend this book. And I think there are definitely people out there who would love this. Like, it's not one of those books where I'm like, this was diabolical, no one should ever read this. It was just one of those books where I'm like, this just wasn't for me, and that's so fine. But yeah, this was a love triangle situation. We're following our main character, Sarah, who owns a pet rescue, and her best friend is a vet, but he's also kind of in love with her. And then she gets this call one day from this guy who's like, there is this dog that is in my yard, and I don't know whose dog it is. Can you come like collect it, basically, because that's kind of part of her job as running this pet rescue, is just like picking up stray dogs. So she goes to this guy's house to pick up this dog, and lo and behold, this guy is a famous actor, and his name is Ethan, and he is terrified of dogs, but he is about to start working a job for a movie where he needs to be around dogs all the time. So when he finds out that she runs this pet rescue, he's like, well, can I pay you to kind of work with me and help me just like get used to being around dogs and get over my fear of dogs? And she's kind of like, well, yeah, that would be great money for me, and my pet rescue doesn't really make a lot of money, so if I can find a little side hustle, sure. So she starts working with this famous actor to help him get over his fear of dogs, but then this actor kind of falls in love with her. So now she has her vet best friend who's in love with her, and this actor guy who's in love with her, and now she's like, oh my gosh, who will I pick? What is that noise? Someone's doing construction. Awesome. But in my opinion, I feel like she kind of like led them both on. Like, she kind of made it look like she kind of had feelings for both of them, which I think she kind of did, but I just didn't love her behavior. And I think when it comes to love triangles, in my opinion, it's usually pretty obvious which person they're gonna end up with. So you're kind of just like waiting for them to end up with that person. And that's just kind of how I felt in this book too. And yeah, there were a few scenes where I was just kind of like almost like uncomfy, because I was like, you're so clearly leading these guys on. And I don't know, it didn't sit right with me. So again, I just don't think I'm the biggest love triangle girl. I feel like sometimes it can be done well, and I like some series, like The Summer I Turned Pretty. I love that series, and that's technically a bit of like a love triangle, but for some reason it just didn't work for me with this book, and that's okay. On the bright side, we have another 5-star read to talk about, and that is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Oh my gosh, was this book so freaking good. This was our book club pick for March with my besties. It was my turn to pick, and I picked this, and I'm so glad that I made everyone read this with me, because it meant that I had 3 other people to discuss it with, obviously. And that is just the best feeling ever, when you read a book, you rate it 5 stars, and then you have other people to discuss it with and like dissect it with. And that's exactly what I got to do with this book with my besties, and we all ended up rating it so highly, which is again just even better when you all love the same book and you can all just talk about your love for the book. Our main character is Katerina, and her biggest dream is basically just to be the best ice dancer there ever was. She wants to win gold at the Olympics, she wants to be the best of the best, and she is so utterly determined to get there. She is a very strong person, nothing is going to get in her way. And so this story is really about her and her life, and just like how she is trying to achieve her dream. However, if you want to be an ice dancer, you have to have a partner. And so we are also following her relationship with Heath, who is her partner from when she's literally like a kid. They become best friends as children, and they continue to get closer and closer as they get older. And they both have very like interesting upbringing, so they are very much like trauma bonded, I would say. So while you're watching them training to be this like elite ice dancing duo, you're also watching the turbulence of their relationship and all of the things that come along with this ice dancing situation. And you also see the relationships they build with the other people in the ice dancing like industry, I guess, like coaches and judges and other ice dancers. And the book is told in a very interesting format, because you have like your main chapters that are told from Kat's POV. So like you're in her head, you're reading what she's thinking and like what's going on in her life from her point of view. But then after each chapter, you get this interview segment where all of these other people, like the coaches, the judges, the other ice dancers, are getting interviewed about these situations that Kat was involved in. So like these competitions that they were at, you get to read about the competition from Kat's POV, but then you also get to read about it from other people's point of views. And sometimes you'll hear a judge say something like, you know, that was the score they deserved because of XYZ, but then you get to see Kat's POV where she's like, we definitely didn't deserve that score because of blah blah blah. And it's just fascinating, and it's told in a way that is so completely addictive. Like, you cannot put this book down, or at least I could not put this book down. Every single time I picked this book up, I would just be like, oh, just one more chapter, just one more chapter, just one more chapter. And I feel like I'm not even explaining it in a way that would make you want to pick it up, but once you pick it up, it is just consuming. Personally, I would describe it as a drama, because it is just straight drama. I would not describe it as a romance book, because whilst there is a romantic relationship in the book, I wouldn't say it's a romance. The main reason why I wanted to pick this book up is because I heard people say it is basically like if Magnolia Parks and Daisy Jones had a baby, this would be the book. And you know what? I don't really agree with that. I do not think you should compare this book to Magnolia Parks. The only reason I think people compare it to that is because there's this like very up and down relationship between Heath and Kat, and they're very much trauma bonded like Magnolia and BJ. But apart from that, I would not compare those books at all, in my opinion. But as someone who loves Magnolia Parks with their entire being, and like Magnolia Parks is my favorite book in the world, they just do not compare to me. Like, they are not in the same category to me. So I wouldn't go in with those expectations, because I feel like if you do, you could be disappointed. Sarah read this before me, and I was talking to her about it, and she said, I don't think you should go in expecting Magnolia Parks. And I'm so glad she said that to me, because I think if she didn't say that to me, I probably would have gone in with those expectations and maybe would have been a bit disappointed. But because she said that to me, I feel like I was a lot more just like, I'll see what this book gives, if that makes sense. I do think, however, it is very comparable to Daisy Jones and the Six. Obviously not music, but the interview style is very comparable. I also think the whole idea of like in Daisy Jones and the Six, you'll hear like Billy or Daisy be like, here's what I thought of this situation, and then you get to see all of the other band members say, this is how it actually looked from the outside. That is very comparable to this. Also just like the rise and the fall of being the best of the best, and then watching what happens after that, very comparable. So I would say if you love Daisy Jones and the Six, I would recommend this book. I feel like honestly it felt very, very reminiscent of Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing. I think if you love TJR, you've got to pick this up. TJR is one of my favorite authors, and honestly I feel like this was like if Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and Carrie Soto had a baby, this would be the book, because you have like the strong, fierce woman and the sport element of Carrie Soto. You have like the fame and like PR relationships and like paparazzi kind of side of things of Evelyn Hugo, and then also like the interview and the turbulent relationships of Daisy Jones. So like if you like those books, pick this up, please. I will say though, I almost rated this 4.5 because whilst it was like addicting and consuming and I just needed to know what was gonna happen, the characters themselves are not the most likable characters in the world. And I kind of got to the end and I was like, do I even like these characters? Like, they're all kind of bad in their own ways. Like, they're likable to an extent, but I wouldn't want to be friends with any of them. And I kind of had to like sit on it for a bit, and I was like, if I don't really like the characters, how can I love the book? But I think that is kind of the point. Like, these characters are raw and real and honest, and that is how people are in real life too. Like, no one is good all the time. No one is likable all the time. And I feel like this story is the epitome of like, if you want something so bad, you will do anything to get it, and you will push everyone out of the way in order to get that. And that doesn't mean being a good person all the time. And that is what this book is. So don't go into this book expecting sunshine and daisies and rainbows and cute little happy couples. Go in expecting mess and drama and lies and deceit and grit and determination. So good though. So good. Moving on, the next book I picked up was Wildside by Elsie Silver, the third book in the Rose Hill series. I liked this. I didn't love it. I gave it a 3.5. I thought it was good, but it's definitely not my favorite book from Elsie Silver. This one follows Reese and Tabitha, and they are essentially strangers. They've met like once before, but they suddenly become the guardians of Tabitha's nephew Milo. And so now these like two strangers who don't really know each other now have to basically co-parent. It's a very interesting situation. Honestly, like the premise and the setup of this book was fascinating to me. And it kind of ends up being a bit of like a forced proximity situation. They very much act like they don't like each other at the beginning, and eventually they kind of become friendly, and then friends, and then feelings get involved. And it was honestly a fun time. I can't even tell you exactly what I didn't like love about this book. I just don't think I got super connected to the characters, but I had a fun time, and I love an interconnected standalone series. Like, I loved being able to see some of our past characters show up in this book and like see what they're up to. And all of the books in this series are single parent romances, and I eat that up every time, so I still had fun with this. Then I picked up Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. This is my second book by this author, and the first one was 5 stars, this one was 4.5. She has a great track record for me currently, and now I just feel like I need to read everything she's ever written. But like I said, 4.5 stars. This was so good. It was almost a 5-star, but it just like wasn't quite there. Like I almost had another 5-star read this month. That is crazy. This book follows Nora, who is a screenwriter. She writes movies, she has 2 kids, and she also just, I was about to say she ended her marriage, but I guess she technically didn't end it, her husband did. But her husband recently left her because he was like, I want a more interesting life. Like I don't want to live in the suburbs in a house with my 2 kids and my wife and like work a normal job. Like I want something more interesting and bigger and better. And so he just packed up and left. And whilst Nora is upset about the breakdown of her marriage, she did kind of see it coming, and it's one of those things where she was almost like expecting it a little bit because her husband hasn't really been the best husband. But she was also providing financially for her family. She was looking after her kids essentially by herself. So she was already like the breadwinner, the provider for the family, like doing everything, planning the meals, making the meals, pouring her husband's cup of coffee every day. And so when he left, it didn't really feel like she lost anything. If anything, it gave her some more freedom. It gave her some more time. So she is actually feeling kind of good about this situation. However, she did end up writing the story of her marriage breakdown and of her life into a movie, which is now being filmed at her house. So this whole film crew has shown up to film at her house, and they're supposed to only be there for a couple days. And there's this famous actor and actress who are playing kind of like her husband and her, like as characters in this movie. And then the movie finishes filming and everyone leaves, the film crew leaves, but for some reason this male actor stays. And he proposes a bit of a deal, saying that he will pay her if she allows him to stay a little bit longer. And she kind of needs the money, and she's also kind of like curious, so she says yes. And this actor, this guy, and her end up spending quite a bit of time together. And as time progresses, you get to know him better, you get to know her better, you kind of start to understand why he wanted to stay and like why he wants to live at Nora's house, and they eventually catch feelings. But it is not as simple as that. Obviously he is a famous actor and she is like a mum living in the suburbs, so it's not the most simple situation, and there's just a lot of things that get in the way. So it's just a fascinating story. I loved the plot, I loved the writing, I loved Nora's character, I loved her kids' characters. I didn't love our male main character, and I think that was like the reason why it wasn't quite a 5-star for me. I still liked him a lot, but I wasn't like obsessed with him. But this is the second book that I've read by this author, and again I am shocked at how well Annabelle Monaghan is able to convey this deep emotional relationship in like 300 pages or under. Like this book is like 260 pages. It is so short, and she was able to get me so attached to these characters and this storyline and like so invested in this situation in like less than 300 pages. Literally, what? I actually don't know how she does it. And now, like I said, I want to read everything she's ever written and everything she will continue to read, so I will be doing that. The next book that I picked up was Summer in the City by Alex Astor. I think this is her first contemporary romance. It's a rom-com set in New York City. It's a forced proximity situation. I wouldn't say it's enemies to lovers, but the characters definitely don't start off on the best foot. They kind of have like a bad first encounter, and then a couple years later when they end up being in this forced proximity situation, the female main character definitely has like a bad taste in her mouth from that previous encounter. So again, like not enemies to lovers, but definitely not like friends to lovers. But this is another book where our female main character Elle is also a screenwriter, and she's writing a movie. So she is writing a movie like based in New York with all of these iconic New York locations. And the male main character Parker, he works in tech and he is a billionaire, and he's trying to do this like big deal, and in order to get this deal he kind of has to just like look good for the press. So he suggests to Elle that they do a bit of like a PR relationship, fake relationship, so that he can get his deal, and then he would also help her go to all of these locations that she needs to go to for her movie and help her brainstorm. So they have this mutual beneficial situation, and it was just a lot of fun. It wasn't anything like crazy, but I just had a good time reading this. I feel like the banter was just fun. I feel like it kind of reminded me of Ali Hazelwood's writing a little bit, just in terms of the girl being a little bit awkward and the guy being a bit more like sullen and serious, and the banter reminded me a lot of Ali Hazelwood, I would say. But I also feel like it had a good amount of emotional depth in this book, so Overall, 4 stars, a fun rom-com, and I would definitely recommend it. And the last 2 books that I read were Cytonic and Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. These are the last 2 books in the Skyward series, which means I have completed the Skyward series, which was my goal for March, so I'm very happy that I was able to achieve that. These are YA sci-fi books, and if you haven't heard of the Skyward series, it follows our main character Spencer, or Spin as she likes to be called, and she is trying to become a fighter pilot, but obviously like in space. Her dad was a fighter pilot and it's always been her dream, but it's a little bit hard for her to achieve that. So that's kind of the premise of the first book, but obviously I can't really tell you what happens in the second and the third and the fourth books because it would be major spoilers. But the world definitely expands so much, the political situation expands so much, like everything just gets bigger and more detailed and more complicated and layered. And I just love Brandon Sanderson's writing. Like, it's fun and it's silly, but it still has a really good like world building and like political setup. I loved Spencer and I loved the side characters so much, especially once we got to read the little novellas that you read in the middle of the series. I feel like that really helped with like getting to know the side characters and really just like rooting for them as well. I ended up giving Cytonic 3.5 and then Defiant 4 stars. I just think that my favorite setting was book 1. I loved it being set at the like flight school and when they were training to be fighter pilots, and every book after book 1 kind of takes place somewhere else. And whilst I did really enjoy kind of just exploring all of these other planets and all of these other worlds, really, I just think I really loved that original setting the most. So I actually think the first book was my favorite, but I do like that we got to spend a lot more time with the side characters and stuff like that in the other books. I think it's like a 4-star series for me overall, not like a total favorite, but still so much fun. And if you're scared of reading Brandon Sanderson, like you're not sure if he's just like a bit too much like high fantasy for you or something like that, which I don't think you should feel that way, but if you do feel that way, start with the Skyward series because it's YA and it's sci-fi, so it doesn't really feel as world buildy as some of the other books that I've read by him. But yeah, this was just such a fun series. But those are all of the books that I read in March. I hope you guys enjoyed me just yapping for way too long about the books that I read this month. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.